Hey, welcome to ARCHLOGBOOK CHATS. Today, I have a very special guest. They are called ArchiDabble. So ArchiDabble is a platform started by a collective of 3 students studying architecture based in the UK, University of Westminster. Firstly, we have, I need to know left and right. Maybe just say your names again.
Yeah, sure. I'm Sude.
Sude,
I'm
Linda, and Elif. Right. So
Yeah.
these 3 students are Sude and Elif study architecture BA course, and Linda studies architecture and environment design BSc. Right. And this was started back when they were in like the first year in school, and they started the platform on Instagram and also the blog to actually provide support to their current and upcoming students alongside the studies. So that is the introduction. I'll say hi. How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah,
Really excited for you. Yeah.
I heard that you guys are about to graduate. How does it feel?
It's great, but it's also nerve-wracking because we don't really know what's next. But
yeah, it's nice to kind of like feel the relief of like after submitting everything and then like getting grades and things like that. But now it's a bit more daunting because we need to enter like the job sector. So a little bit scared, a little bit excited, but just want to enjoy a bit of time now before we move on to the next chapter.
Yeah, I've still got 1 more year, so hopefully I'll feel.
Oh, that's good. You're still in school, right? That's great.
Yeah.
So how was the experience like so far? I mean, is there anything that you look back and then you see that, wow, I did this? Was there any particular highlights that you wanted to share with us today?
Highlights.
Yeah.
The elephant in the room, COVID, maybe.
COVID, yes. How was it?
This year has been our only year where we were actually in uni from start to finish, which was our final year, which is the most important. It's the first time we ever experienced an exhibition as well. But it's been a roller coaster of emotions, that's for sure. It was the end of our first year in March, going into lockdown, experiencing a final crit online, no exhibition, and then majority of second year all online for such a practical course as well. It was a shock for us, and it was also a shock for, I'm guessing, all universities out there as well, trying to teach architecture online, which isn't the best format, if I'm honest. But we didn't have much of a choice. But finally, we got to experience a full academic year on campus, which was really nice.
Yeah, and I think like finally being able to be in studio with your studio mates again in person, that was really nice as well. And just being able to physically access all the resources at uni, that was like much better than studying online.
Yeah, there's a lot of highs and lows that comes with the degree and like the experience of it. Probably like one of my best highlights is starting ArchiDabble. Like we started it at such a like good time. Like when we started it, we didn't have any intentions of like we didn't know how big it would be or like how much it would add value to us as much as it like adds value to other students and like helps them. So like looking back on it, even though it's only like been 2 years.
It's coming up to 2 years.
No, nearly 2 years. It's like a huge achievement. I'm really proud of like how much we've done.
Yeah.
So what made you start like ArchiDabble? Was it a personal grievance or, like, I need some support and why isn't anybody giving, for example? Or is it something
Honestly,
different?
that's exactly what it was. That was exactly what it was.
I guessed correctly.
That's like everybody's issue, more or less. At the end of first year, we realised that with our case, there was a bit of a missing part of the curriculum when it came to digital skills. Specifically, like that was the changing factor. And so Elif had the idea of, I want to start a blog, but
I don't want to do it alone.
Yeah. So she more or less proposed it to us, and we sort of gathered up our ideas in the summer break of our first year. And we just launched it the moment the academic year started in September 2020.
A bit of history here,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lack of digital skills that kind of like pushed us almost like to start it. But it's also that when we started it, we were only just like finishing first year, so we weren't incredibly experienced in anything. So it was as much as that we were trying to help people who were coming into architecture, it was also like we were almost receiving the same amount of help back from different platforms and like really encouraging bits of advice and just
like we started on Instagram, and I hadn't seen the Archi community side on Instagram at all until ArchiDabble started. So it sort of just opened up a completely new path and completely new audience and set of creators as well, which I don't think I would have come across or would be exposed to as much as now if we hadn't started ArchiDabble.
Yeah, and I think something else that we really did with the blog was sharing our experiences. Like, we didn't start it to show that we're experts in digital skills or how architecture school works. It was kind of documenting our journeys throughout architecture school and hoping that people would find value in that and benefit from what we went through, and so they didn't feel that they were alone in the challenges that we face studying architecture.
I think that came across a lot in second year when we were online.
Yeah.
You don't get to see what your classmates are doing at all, whereas with us, we were posting online what we were doing at home, or when we would come into uni, what we would be up to. And it sort of maybe gave other people reassurance as well, to show that we're all sort of in the same boat where we're stuck at home having to study.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see, like, I think myself included, I started, I think around the same time as you guys also, like around 2020, where, I think 2 years ago, right? And that was a very good season for a lot of new creators that comes out. Like, and yeah, I wanted to say that we are all students of architecture, no matter where we are. Even myself, when I'm like about 3 years after graduation, I'm still learning a lot of things, and there's no worries to start something and to share. I think, yeah, I believe that coming from a place of like, I want to share something and to document my journey, and hopefully it helps somebody else, it comes like a very pure place. Like, I believe that there's no other intentions need to be met. It's just a matter of like sharing your experiences, and I really applaud you for that. So basically, I want to talk about I want to talk about your journey as content creators. I mean, there's the starting of the platform, and there's like the different challenges along the way. You want to share a bit more about that? Like, what was the challenges you faced? Was there anything that in particular that you struggled with as a content creator, juggling between that and studies or stuff like that?
I think when you say like something you've struggled with when it comes to ArchiDabble, I don't know if I'd say like struggle immensely, but it's definitely been challenging at times, is like the consistency at which we post that, and like the content that we provide. Like, everything that we put out, we do try to put it out to like the best quality that we can, whether that's like an Instagram post, whether it's like an actual blog post on the website. And even though that our method of working is that we would write up the majority of it like beforehand, and then throughout the academic year release them week by week. With obviously there'll sometimes be like times where we write it up that week instead of having it written before. But something challenging would probably be like keeping on that routine of like posting so consistently and trying to keep. Sometimes it's very easy to forget to stay like active through like keeping communication and be as transparent as we want to be through things like Instagram stories, like really simple stuff as well. Because that's something that we do pride ourselves on, like being transparent with everyone that like follows or even takes a minute to look at our page. We want to like come across as we are in our day-to-day lives. Like there's not two versions of us, like one in person and then one online. It's kind of just we are how we are, and we try to put that across through stories most of the time. But there's just times where like it's either really difficult, where we're challenged, and not everyone's always confident to share things. Sometimes that might be a bit more challenging on our behalf. I think that's definitely been a difficulty at times. But where one of us might not feel confident, the other will kind of like substitute in for that or something like that.
Yeah, I think something that we agreed on way at the beginning of ArchiDabble was ArchiDabble is always going to feel like a hobby. It's always going to be fun. The moment it starts to turn into something like a job or a chore, then we won't force ourselves to do it, because it's going to come like the chances of it coming across ingenuine or inconsistent, or you can just already tell that as creators from our side we are forcing ourselves to do it. That's not what we want to do with ArchiDabble. and it's meant to be fun for us. It's an outlet. It's just a completely different creative outlet where we share what we do. And if we are having a bad week or it is deadline week and if we don't feel like posting, then we're not going to force ourselves to post. We will give in like a filler after we feel like we can get back onto it to say, you know, we were gone because we were doing so and so. So we won't sort of hang off and you just don't hear from us at all. We always try and keep everybody informed, but it's always meant to be fun for us as well, as much as it is for people who take in our content.
Yeah, and I think like also bearing in mind that we had to transition from having run like the blog for 1 year online to then having to fit it in with our kind of like third year, the pressure that we felt, you know, in our final year, trying to graduate, and kind of, you know, keeping up the blog alongside all the things that we were dealing with in uni. That did get challenging at times, and I know personally for me, there were times where, well, for the majority of the year, I didn't really update what I was doing, like on stories and that, because I don't know, I just felt, is this really valuable to people if I'm struggling to this extent? Like, how many people can actually relate when I'm going like, you know, for weeks without feeling like I'm achieving anything?
It's like a new side of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Kind of, basically. That's what it's like. But we try and avoid it or overlook it or like just fight for it as much as we can, because realistically, even if we are struggling, it's nice for somebody to view that, you know, our life isn't all roses and daisies and that we have our days where we struggle as well.
And from like an outside perspective, someone might think, oh my God, like Instagram stories, that's not like a big deal. Like it's okay if you don't post. And I think it's not a big deal, but when it comes to like, when we put something out there, we generally get a lot of responses through like DMs of whether it's like an architect student or just a student in like the creative industry, just being like, it's nice to hear that I'm not alone in this. Like I feel the exact same way. And I didn't realize that people like, or just general people who have a following or have a more like prominent profile online would feel the same, just because we're very used to showing like all the best bits and like all the completed processes and like nice things about being an architect student. So when we don't post on Instagram stories, whilst it doesn't look like a big deal from the outside, it's a difficulty to us because we value it so much because of the response we get. So it's important to us and like the people that might follow us.
Yeah, I can relate to you guys very well. So I started this like ArCHLOGBOOK also after graduation. Also stems from my own frustrations that there was no like practical knowledge available, right? And I also had the imposter syndrome, like who am I really to share all these things? You know, it's things that I've learned on the job, like for the 0 to 1 year of my practice. And yeah, I can totally relate to you guys, as well as the struggles to post consistently. And even for myself, when I take a break, I do take a break usually after every season. So for those budding content creators listening, right, for example, like one of the things that the first hurdle is how do we get on the platform? Second hurdle is how can it be consistent? What can I post? Is this really what people are looking for? And my answer to that is actually just try. I hope you agree to that. So just moving forward to now, maybe from 2020 all the way to 2022, what was the highlights of like ArchiDabble and like the content creation journey for you guys?
Hitting 1K.
2 years.
Yeah, we hit 1K a couple of months ago.
Yeah. February maybe?
Yeah, I think it was around February, which it might not be a big deal for anyone else, but we're not
It's a big deal
too
for you
hooked
guys.
up. Yeah, we're not too hooked with numbers, but it's just nice to visualize that many people think we're worth following.
It's almost like a validation to the imposter syndrome we feel sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I'm not going crazy. Like the things we do put out, people must enjoy it, must find it helpful in order to be following us. And like to even think that we might be helping like 10, 20 people, like 1,000 is a lot of people. I can't imagine that many people in a room.
It's like a lecture theatre.
That was nice.
That was definitely a milestone.
Yeah, and it was nice when we like posted about it, how many people like congratulated and came together as well. It was just like a very supportive environment, even if it is like online. It was really nice. Another milestone or?
I think like also the opportunities that we got involved in because of ArchiDabble. Like I know we did, was it MadCon? Like,
Yeah.
I think sometime, like it was months ago as well. And then the podcast that we started to do. Yeah. I think those are really nice because we're connecting with other content creators and we are part of this like, you know, wider community. And it's nice to see like what other people are doing as well, and you know each other's work and you can like connect through that. I think those moments are quite nice as well.
Having genuine conversations that whether they're like architecture based or a bit more general to do with like studying it or working in it, like those actual back and forth conversations with people that we've never met in person, but they might have progressed further in their career right now than us, and they're helping us out, or I don't know, the same way we give advice or just our thoughts and thought process to someone who might be in first or second year, like having that through like a platform is really valuable. I would say
another milestone. I think last year when we relaunched back in September was really nice. So before that, if I'm going to be honest, we had a very mediocre website
and a terrible page.
Yeah, like there was like we were still like, again, I said this in Architalks podcast. We were at the bottom of the food chain, and like we didn't understand much about like Instagram algorithm and like what visuals are wanted or what does well and whatnot.
Ironic as architecture students.
Yeah, we were architecture students as well, which is ridiculous. But once we had a good sit down and a good couple months to sort of sort out like logo and website and Instagram and how it's going to be displayed and videos, and there's more ideas that we didn't end up doing but are still in our like archived folders that we'd love to do. But when we relaunched back in September last year, it was so nice to have a clean slate where it was just consistent. Everything was nicely consistent, and it was really nice.
I think we feel more put together as well as a team.
Yeah.
And like it, I don't know, it's just added like a new chapter for ArchiDabble. Like everything is a bit more like regulated. Like we have a bit more of a schedule. We know more of what we wanted to do, and we were obviously running by like the academic schedule. So we were doing September to like June, July, and then we'd have the summer, and that's all changing obviously as we're graduating now. But those were all working highlights.
Yeah.
But I'd say also I think people approaching us in person is so nice.
Yeah, I think naturally a lot of our audience came from students within our own university. And I remember in the beginning of our third year, we would have people in our year group where we obviously didn't see them in second year because we were online, who came up to us and thanked us and said, oh, so-and-so tutorial helped me a lot last year, because we were obviously online. So the amount of help that you could get was very limited. So people resorted to third parties, stuff like ArchiDabble. And to have like people in our same year group to just come up and say, you know, it helped me out so much and so on, it was genuinely like the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
What was the number one like content that you created that people appreciated? What's the best content you created that you think maybe both in terms of like likes, or second maybe both in terms of like what you really think is the best content that you created?
Best content.
The most popular and what you think is actually the best that you created. Maybe a certain tutorial or a certain visual that you created.
To be honest, I quite like our like yearly reflections that we have. It's like whether or not it's gotten the traction that we want is a different question, but it's nice to sort of splurge out all our experiences and our emotions at the end of the academic year. So we've done it for all 3 years now, because it's like a great insight for other people, but it's also nice to sort of read back what I was thinking about my degree in first year and second year and this year as well. And it's like always going to be documented in there to go back to and read. It's nice. It's like kind of nostalgic.
Yeah.
It's like a journal per se, right? Yeah. It's like your own journal.
If I was to answer like the question last year, I probably would have said like our tutorials on our blog page, because they've been my proudest work, just because it's like I've come so far that I know how to do this now. I can explain for you how to do it.
Yeah.
Like that's just And it's like an amazing feeling. I think now, if I was to answer it, it would probably be some of the Instagram content that we've created. Just because of how informative it can be, but also how accessible and short it is to people.
I think our guest posts as well.
Yes,
All of them need recognition, because lots of people that we've reached out to were really kind to collaborate with us, whether or not we were in the current position that we are now or when we were like really tiny and irrelevant. We were like that. Lots of people helped us out, and I feel like something that we haven't posted about in a while is like our architecture versus a degree.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen that often done by anybody else, but I don't know how insightful it is from an outsider's perspective, but it's kind of cool to compare architecture to a different degree, because like our thought processes, our assessments, our expectations, our focuses are completely different, and you get to see that. Yeah, you get to see that for a discussion between two people studying the degrees.
Yeah, because not everybody who goes on to study architecture always had that dream, like since they were, like they knew what the idea of what they wanted to do when they grow up. And I think to have like a resource for people to compare architecture to like other subjects that they might consider studying in the future, I think that's really helpful, because going to university, that's like an investment, and it takes up a lot of your time, and like ultimately it puts you on like a career path that you invest your time into. So I think that's something good that we do with the blog. Yeah.
So what are the plans for ArchiDabble? Is it a big question to ask?
Good question.
It's definitely continuing.
Oh yeah.
I think we all still enjoy it as much as we did when we first started it. So it's going to continue. I think the type of content that we provide will probably switch a little bit, just in terms of like the content we provide is based on sort of where we are with our careers in life and our stories in architecture. So as we graduate, or if we're not graduating yet, like the content will come based off of
what we're currently experiencing.
You get like everyone that follows gets to experience it with us. And I feel
like there'll be like currently the current path of ArchiDabble has been heavily like student life based, and it's likely that will continue with an addition of, hopefully, fingers crossed, if we get a job. For like us two, I feel like once that happens, and like the application process, interviews, like that's all a completely different branch that we haven't discovered yet. So once that happens, we'll have again a lot more content to talk about that's completely new, but very likely that there might be a tad bit of a shift to the working industry of architecture now.
Something we did want to do is keep that student aspect alive, just because we do, like, that's kind of where we started from. And it's also something that we're always going to be learning. So there's no harm in keeping that like student resources available as like updated with new students that are coming into uni. So that's something we're in the midst of like planning.
Fixing right now. We can talk about it, right? Yeah. We recently finished applications for a student team who can join us to continue, like Elif said, the student side of ArchiDabble. And because up until like we get back into masters, me and Elif won't be able to talk about the student lifestyle anymore. So we've gotten applications, and we're going to finalise the team hopefully in this week, and then we'll see from there.
And future plans also, it's been brought up a couple of times, the possibility of maybe a more like a talking type of content, like podcast. There's been a bit of hesitance. Like,
I'm all for it. I've been like trying to get this podcast to happen for a while.
You guys are 3%.
This podcast,
there's a tiebreaker somewhere. There's a tiebreaker between one of you. Right, 3%. Yeah.
I think, because off the bat, there's three of us. So there's like, we can talk for a while. And there's so much to talk about. And even amongst us friends, we talk a lot anyways. And we've had, especially with students that are at Westminster right now, they've even suggested it as well. Like, I think you guys should start a podcast.
Yeah, we always get why don't you start a podcast?
because I feel like it's one of those things that you can pop open whilst you do some work, and what better to speak to, like, have 3 architecture students or post-architecture students talking about architecture or something similar to it whilst you do your work. I think it just would work. It does, obviously, you probably know yourself, need some organisation.
It does.
And so on. So it might be something that we look into.
But anything long term in terms of plan for ArchiDabble, I think we're just taking opportunities as it comes, and we're always open for new ideas and like working, collaborating with people and other like content creators or even students or anyone in the architecture industry is like something we're very open to, because there's always something to learn, as well as like the things that we can provide. So we're just taking it. We're going with the flow for now.
Yeah, we're still figuring, like we're still in that period.
Yeah,
where
roaming
we're
about.
figuring out. Yeah. What to do next.
So anybody out there, feel free to reach out to us. We're very open. We're very open to anything.
Yeah, I think for myself, I also have a lot of changes. I think the initial idea for my ARCHLOGBOOK was to just share visuals and very bite-sized content, and just diversify into so many different like content ventures like podcasts. And I'm also looking at creating YouTube videos for tutorials as the next step. After I'm done with this episode, because it's the last episode of season 2, which is great.
Ooh.
And I'm looking forward to actually spending more time to work on those projects now, because after the podcast, it takes a lot of my time, but it's actually very fulfilling. So I recommend that you guys try it, right? And use Riverside as a platform. And it's really good. I should be affiliate. I think I can say affiliate link.
But it seems to be really successful. Like we've listened to and watched a couple of your episodes, and it's really enjoyable because you get so many people from like that have different. Everyone's involved in like the architecture industry in some way or another, but it's also different from each other. It's just so nice.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's really interesting for me personally to talk to many different architect or students with backgrounds, like content creators, non-content creators, different countries, different years of experience even. So it's really interesting to hear somehow there's some commonality in answers as well. Like when I ask questions about, maybe I ask you later about what problems you see in the industry, right? Maybe you can share a bit more about what you think that their problems are, and most probably will be the same answers as I got. Yeah, so maybe for a start, like what is the problem you see that is in the industry, and do you think there's any other solutions for it? Or you're not sure yet?
I think a problem or something that's a bit more difficult, I think, with the industry is having these connections. Like as a graduate, it feels kind of difficult to, personally speaking, I feel, even though I've got my degree, I still don't feel like I'm experienced enough to like approach architects and people who might be further ahead in their career, like with the like thought process of like entering that job, or almost feel like even though I have the degree, maybe my skill set is not enough, and it feels really daunting to approach people, because there's, other than like things like the exhibition that we had, like the end of year exhibition, it's very difficult to find a place where you would naturally just encounter these people, like these employers and architects and firms and people that work in these places. Like there's not many places that you would just naturally come across each other. It's very professional, very like straightforward. I applied for a job, and then whether they want to see me again or not, it's just, it feels like it's very like one route, and there's no other options of how you might get into a job other than maybe knowing people, which is great, but if you don't know anyone, then it's not so great, and just applying online.
I think like being a content creator in like the architecture community has kind of given us an advantage in that we are aware of things like when firms don't like have a good work ethic and treat their employees like as well as they should, and like we hear people talking about those things. So in general, we have like more of an awareness, and we like more or less know what to look out for when we go and look for a job to make sure we're going into the right working environment. But at the same time, when you're like first going into that process of applying for architecture jobs, because you haven't been through it, like there's still a chance that you might not make the right decision, or like you might still fall into a firm that you realize that you're working more than you should, and things like that. And these are all just things that we hear about, but experiencing them is something that we haven't gone through. So I suppose, just like being new to, like, just being vigilant when we go out and look for a job.
I think a problem that comes with that is, as a part one, because you're almost like the least experienced in terms of the whole architecture process, specifically for the UK. It's like, it feels like the industry almost makes it feel like, do I have the luxury to say no, I don't want to apply somewhere, or no to a job that might not have the correct work ethic, that might not pay what it needs to be paying, that makes you work overtime without being paid. Like, do I have that luxury to say, no, I don't want that job, when it's so competitive and the employers know this, and that's why they're kind of getting away with a lot of these problems that are arising and that's coming to surface now with like bigger organizations through social media. I think that's probably the most evident problem right now.
Yeah, basically, it's quite scary. That's exactly what it is, because we don't know what we're going into. We're not experienced. Like Elif said, do I have the luxury of saying no because I don't like the criteria or what you're asking of me to do? We speak to like master students at university, and they speak about the outrageous amount of hours that they worked and how much they actually got paid. But
they worked it because it's a competitive field.
They have to, and they want to do their experience so they can continue on to their masters, and time is ticking. So I think from our perspective as recent graduates, it's very upsetting, if anything, to see how much of I don't know if corrupt is a really strong word, but it more or less is, of an industry it is, because a lot of people who actually study architecture, and when you look at people who don't study architecture and they look at us, they think we get paid well, which is really funny because we don't. Again, I haven't got a job, but it's like one of the biggest catfish industries out there, because you'd think that we would get the recognition that we should be getting with the amount of work and the amount of responsibility that we have for a function in society, when none of that is actually, or what it seems like is that none of it is actually met. And that's sort of like the mask that we've got. Like when we look at things like FA Front are doing, they're constantly exposing firms on the RIBA website, and I'm like, really? Every day there's a new place that we're going to expose? Like, it just keeps going. And how likely is it that this one job that I found on like LinkedIn jobs is actually going to be great, or is it just a mirage and a facade and it's actually not what it seems like it is? And so now it's just like a questioning process, applying. But when I do have like tutors who ask me, are you looking for a job, and like, is there a specific firm in mind? I've kind of left the firms in mind, and I'm thinking I might just take the first job that I actually get. Because I don't, like, for me personally, I don't have the luxury of waiting like 6 months for that perfect opportunity, especially because I want to get that 7-8 year process out and done as soon as possible, and continue on with like my other dreams. So yeah,
I think these problems are they're not going to be resolved anytime soon, because it's so it's just always it's continuous.
Yeah, it's like it's being tackled, but it's like it's one of those things that you wish could just end overnight, but that's not going to happen either. I think that's also something which it sort of leads for people to want to go abroad, and I see like lots of people who want to come here, but I feel like the same problems that might be happening in a different country also does happen here, but it just doesn't get exposed. But recently it is being exposed. But yeah, if you like we all have parts, or like what's the word, like intentions of wanting to do part of the process abroad, because we're constantly surrounded by, it's like negativity, basically. That's what it is. But yeah,
I think the good news is that things are changing, especially when
Yeah.
social media is rising and the awareness is there. And like, for example, FA Front is trying to expose a lot of the firms' discriminatory practices. And that is one thing that I'm looking forward to as well as a young architectural designer. Also, second problem also is the overtime paid and the long hours. We are also in the good position right now. Of course, there's technology helping us, so not to worry. I think it's going to be fine as long we do take steps, as a fraternity to progress and not to be stuck in our old ways. I believe that that's going to happen in maybe like 5-10 years time. So hopefully you guys stay on the journey and experience the fruits of our labor, like changing things, changing the way we practice architecture. That's what I can say to you guys, because that is happening right now, especially in Singapore where I'm based, right? We are also talking about how do we like increase our value as architects. And one of the reasons why we face this problem of like low salary is because of the price that we bid for our projects, right? So I'm also talking to architects in Singapore who are also figuring out how to better articulate our value in terms of in a few proposals. And the problem that I see is happening now is because 10 years ago, there's not many design objectives to be met. Like, for example, sustainability. There was no something about sustainability. Nobody cares about it, right? Things about cultural heritage, things about maintainability, things like buildability, like using technologies to build the structures faster and more effectively. All these different objectives are coming in to the design brief, and there's no corresponding increase in fees, right? So all these things is being tackled now, thankfully, especially when in Singapore we're talking about it now. There was a survey done by the Singapore Institute of Architects. They actually surveyed young graduates. So what was it? Only 7% are considering to stay on the long term. It's quite it's very interesting. Even
sad.
yeah,
It's
so
such a nice
it was a
topic.
question. The question was phrased like, "Are you considering to leave the industry in 3 years?" So they said,
They went
considering.
straight to the point of the question. Do you want to leave?
Because the problem we face in Singapore is that there's a high turnover, right? And also people are leaving the industry. Young designers like my level, like 3 years in the industry, and they're pursuing different opportunities outside, and they're doing pretty well. So they're losing a lot of talent, and especially when in Singapore there's an article published, and then suddenly we're all scrambling. So we're all. I mean, I'm part of the volunteers of trying to firstly break down the knowledge that's needed between graduations and graduates as well as to licensure. So there's this gap, right, of 0 to 3 years, and there is always opportunity to share knowledge online. So what we're trying to do is to compile the knowledge and to put it into like a shared drive. That is like one of the many steps. And secondly, I'm also helping the architects to see how best to better articulate our value. Usually social media or even interviews like this, sharing about what we do as architects, not to be, and it raises the awareness. Yeah, so hopefully all these things I'm trying to do can actually trickle down to like maybe 5 years, 10 years. We'll see a better, more sustainable work practice. We will see happier architects. We'll see buildings that are more sustainable at the same time as like well designed. Yeah. So that is happening.
Hopefully we
Any
see
thoughts?
less people leaving. Hopefully we see more people staying in architecture.
Yes.
Because of the treatment that we get in the industry. Because even now, like knowing people from our degree that might have finished the degree but are contemplating different careers and different jobs. Maybe because yes, they also have an interest in that, but more so because of the pay, but also like the image that the architecture job industry has, which is true to what it is. Like now that everything's come to surface, but because of the treatment of how, like especially part ones in the job sector, like it's sad to see people that like go to alternative careers that they might have in mind when in fact they wanted to go into the architecture world, but they're not so confident anymore. It's just put them off from doing it. So hopefully, like you said, in like 5 to 10 years, we'll see less of that happening.
Yeah.
But it's also, I don't know if you guys get this, because, we're all content creators, but I do sometimes also think it is the content that I'm making on like social media, things like our reviews and just how honest we are with people and our platform. Is that going to hinder my chance of getting employed in the architecture world? So that's like a difficulty and a problem of the industry that comes with being a content creator.
Yeah, like there've been times in where they're like, do I need to hold back? Yeah. Is this going to have a consequence on just not even ArchiDabble, but as an individual? And I think, like you said in our reflections, how honest can I be, or is somebody going to encounter this and then just like their impression of me completely changes because I'm being brutally honest? Because I think as well as like a part one architectural assistant in the UK, again, bottom of the food chain, when you go into a firm, it's like how much of a say do you have? Realistically, you're just there because you need to be, and you're sort of like the amount of responsibility you have. Again, this will change depending on where you go to, especially like in larger firms. You're almost like a pawn in the whole system, if I'm honest. You like the whole image or the stereotype of bringing coffee to someone, like that still exists. Like it's just sad.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I didn't I think it's safe to say that I didn't study 3 years to just bring coffee to someone's room,
or draw bathrooms.
Or draw bathrooms. And the thing is, and then I'm questioning now, can I complain as well? So it's just this constant back and forth of how experienced am I, how relevant am I, and in worst case scenario, if what I do going to have an effect on my employability, because that's probably the last thing that we would want with ArchiDabble and our individual lives.
Yeah, because we do try to be transparent, as we said. We want people to know the reality of what we go through on our journeys to become architects. But it's a challenge sometimes when there's that conflict between what we can say and what that means for us.
The label of problematic will arise, and I'm pretty sure no employee out there would want to employ someone who could be anything like problematic. Because if I'm speaking about or speaking up about issues at university, what's the likelihood of me speaking out when I feel like something unfair happens in the workplace? And I could see why an employee would probably not want someone like that, because they don't want to cause anything that could throw dirt on their office, any friction. They want collaboration, sure, but if you pay me well, then sure, we can do it. It's going to go fine. But it's this consistency of wanting to get the optimum outcome for the least amount of pay. And like you said, if we are going to invest in things that will tackle climate change and global warming and sustainability, overpopulation, anything, we will have to invest more time. We will need to invest in technologies that are new, that are more expensive because they're not as common. But if my pay isn't going to go up, then why would I do it? Yes. And that's why you'll just see lots of buildings made out of concrete, because it's easy and simple.
Yeah, that does need to directly or in some sort of aspect correlate to the outcome that we get from doing this job. We need to see it as well, for what we're doing. So I think, there's problems that exist in the industry as someone who's just graduated as a part one or maybe a part two. But then there's also problems that exist in the industry that make it more difficult as a content creator. So there's kind of two ends of the spectrum a little bit. I might cross over. But scary.
Yeah, but I guess
there's just so much conflict.
Yeah, I guess that when you post content, always think about is this objective or subjective, right? Is it my own opinion, and does this really help the industry, or is this my own personal outburst or something like that? So I leave it to you, because I think you guys are. I guess it's just for my own experience. There will always be haters, right? There will always be people who don't like the content and don't agree with you, and there'll be people who really agree with you and applaud you for sharing honestly what you think about this particular practice or this particular thing that's happening. So not to worry about that anyway, because usually there'll always be both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the podcast has been quite long. I wanted to end it with like a question that I ask many guests is like, how any advice you give to students who are in the school or maybe young graduates like yourself?
Ooh, where to begin? Everyone probably hears this already, but I already miss going to university and I'm just graduating.
Yeah.
Like, so probably make the most of like your modules as much as you can, especially the design ones. Like personally for me, I don't know, maybe go bigger, maybe go bolder. Like, don't limit yourself, and also like don't lose the balance between your work and then like your sanity, like your health, and like the things you do enjoy doing. Like, it's demanding and architecture is difficult, yes, but best advice probably be take everything as it comes, and it's not the end of the world if something doesn't go your way, or something you might get like a mark or an outcome that you didn't predict or want. But just everything just works out in the end. It just somehow does.
Yeah, I think I'd like definitely say try and like keep an eye out on what architecture content creators are doing and sharing and posting, because a lot of them do post content that supports you with your studies, and something that you might be struggling with for a while, like it could be solved just by checking what a content creator has posted. And I think one of the reasons why we started ArchiDabble was because we wanted to share the support that we thought we could give to other students. So yeah, just in general, like look out in that community of content creators.
Adding to that, probably don't be scared of asking for help. Like the only way you're going to get answers is by asking for it. Like, so if whether that's like through a DM to a content creator, you might not get the outcome you want in terms of you might not get the answers to the question, but at least you tried. Or even like with your tutors and other like your peers at university, someone will always know how to do something that you might not know how to do. So, and vice versa, you might know something that they don't know how to do. So it's almost like a two-way street. Always ask for help. Like, don't be afraid of thinking like, oh, I don't know how to do this, so it's going to be humiliating if I ask someone. Like, that's not the best mindset to have, because how else are you supposed to learn? Like, there's been times where we've asked for help on our stories, and we give out advice to people, and that we share our resources as well. So we don't know everything. We don't expect everyone else to know everything. So it's just like just be friendly and ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, I think for me, I would have two pieces of advice. One would be, don't go into architecture if you don't think you want to study it. Because I would say is one of the degrees where you really need to enjoy it to get through the whole process. Because there have been times where we've come across people who had studied it because they just want to have a diploma. You know, they want to have an undergraduate degree. They kind of don't care what they get it in, but as long as they say, I've got something that I've gone to uni for, it's very demanding. It's not a little run in the park at all. It's so demanding, and you will make sacrifices, unfortunately, I'd say. Like, I would say we're all people who have somewhat good time management. I'm not going to say perfect. And I was still finding myself in every single day this year. And that includes holidays and that includes weekends. And I was doing nothing but my degree and ArchiDabble, and that was more or less it. And that's not because I poorly managed my time. I just knew, I was coming into uni because I knew I was more productive here, and I was spending more than 12 hours every single day. And it's demanding, and you need to match that. I'm not saying that's the only way you can get the whole degree. Obviously, if you just are quicker at some things, then it's going to take you less time. But over time, you're going to get better at things, and things will take less time. But just don't go into it if you think you might not enjoy it. Maybe do something like a foundation year, or just expose yourself to the actual industry and the degree to get a taste of what it might be like, because it's a real commitment. Like, I went to a summer school beforehand with the Bartlett. Even that wasn't a good representation of what the degree was. But without it, I would have no idea what I would be expecting. I think that would be my first one. And my second one would be, don't say yes to everything.
Yes.
Don't say yes to everything that your tutor say, because firstly, it's a creative field, so it's purely subjective when it comes to design. I might like it, but if my tutor doesn't like it, that's not because, they're more experienced, but maybe it's just a matter of preference. And that doesn't make it bad design, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Maybe somebody can say otherwise. But I've seen, not myself personally, thank God I did not fall for that trap. I was saying no whenever I didn't like a suggestion. But I think looking around, there's been lots of people who just say yes. And when I look at them, I'm there like, have you become a designer that you want to be? Or have you just become an outcome of your tutor's feedback? Like to me, I personally see that as two things. And it would be much more enjoyable if I just did the degree the way I wanted to, with in simultaneously to the feedback I was getting. So to sort of step up and say, I'm not a big fan of this idea, how could we work around it? And so you're doing something more enjoyable is much more healthy and a better outcome of your degree, rather than just saying yes to everything because you just know it's going to get a higher mark. It's just, to me, it's not as adventurous. And I would say it'd be nicer for people to, even if you are at the bottom of the food chain, which I've mentioned 3 times now, still try and, bring in your other interests. Like maybe you're designing a art school and you've got a background in fine art and galleries and stuff, and you want to incorporate it, but you're too shy to, or your tutor has suggested not to, but still go for it, because at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world, like Elif said, and you're not going to lose anything from it either. So just go for it, interrogate your tutors as well. They're still learning. So
I think make the effort to at least have the conversation and get into the habit of treating like those tutorial sessions that we have in design school, treat them as conversations with as a design team. Don't just treat it as someone that you might go to and then them give you a suggestion, you automatically be like, yep, you suggested it, so it sounds good.
Interrogate it, because
or find a middle ground between what you want and what they're suggesting, because the outcome of that might be greater than the outcome of what they were initially suggesting.
Because if you say yes to everything, it goes back to the format of previous school, like secondary school. Like you just listen to what your teacher says and that's it, that's final. Whereas in university, when you're studying architecture, you have the opportunity to say no. You have the opportunity to bring something new to the table that maybe they don't even know about, and you can have a discussion about it. That's the nice part of architecture, and take advantage of it. Don't say yes. Don't just accept a yes.
But you get better with noticing those things with time, and the more time you spend in architecture school, the more you'll be able to distinguish between what's constructive feedback and what just might be your tutor's personal preference.
And sometimes you just don't take all the feedback. Like I think this year I realised that you don't have to agree with all the feedback that you're getting. Sometimes you just don't respond to some feedback because you just know it's a preference comment and you just leave it as it is and you accept it.
That's really good advice. So with that, thank you so much, Sude, Linda, and Elif, for your time. Really had a good conversation with you. Looking forward to hear more from you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.